Alrighty, we are live.
Thank you, Katie. Good morning, everyone. I'm Chair Sage Turner, and I'd like to welcome you to the September 20th Housing and Community Development Committee meeting. We are participating virtually today, and those of you who are out there with us, welcome. Thank you for joining. To help our audience follow along, I'm going to state each section of the agenda aloud. We are also streaming live on our Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the city's website on the front page of the Virtual Engagement Hub link. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone, and to do so, you'll call 855-925-2801, and when prompted for a code, that code is 9791. For today's meeting, we also have the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. To do that, you'll use that same number, 855-925-2801, and meeting code 9791. But your phone will become muted and you will hear the meeting starting live. At this point, you'll hear for more options, please press star. And pressing star 3, that's star 3, will allow callers to continue to listen live and join a speaker queue. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. As a general reminder, if you could all stay on mute unless needing to speak, and you can raise both a visual hand or a virtual hand if you need to speak up. And right now, I'm going to go ahead and start a roll call. One last reminder, please do not use the chat function. Not everyone can see it, and we've had some information get lost in it. All right, so roll call. I'm going to introduce all the committee members and staff who are participating today. Vice Mayor Shanika Smith.
Good morning.
Good morning, Councilwoman Antoinette Mosley.
Hello.
Hello. Assistant City Manager Rachel Wood.
Good morning.
Community and Economic Development Director Nikki Reed.
Good morning.
Affordable Housing Officer Sasha Berchinsky.
Good morning.
We have one of our city attorneys. I see Janice Ashley.
Good morning.
And I see our new Affordable Housing Specialist, Kevin Lynn. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
I think this is your first HCD meeting, so welcome and thank you for being here with us. Welcome to the team.
Thank
All
you.
right. Did I get everyone? Did I miss anyone? I see some other faces, but I can't see. Okay, if I missed, just speak up. Oh, we have Jonathan, right? I can't see everybody. Okay, I'm going to get started on the agenda. First up is the approval of minutes. Did you all have a chance to review the action minutes? And if so, may I get a motion?
Move that the minutes be approved as presented. Second.
Thank you. And we'll do a roll call vote because we are virtual. Councilwoman Antoinette Mosley.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Smith.
Aye.
Myself, Sage Turner. Aye. All right. We have completed item number 1, and we are moving on to item number 2, which is a discussion around the allocation of remaining affordable housing bond funds. I believe Sasha is going to be walking us through this. Thank you, Sasha. Go ahead.
I am, thank you. And I believe Katie is presenting my slides. You didn't, thank you. Yes, so Councilwoman, a few months ago, I believe it was in March, we came to you with an update on the affordable housing bond. Next, just as a reminder, you could go to the next slide, Katie. Just as a general reminder, the city issued voters approved $25 million affordable housing bond in 2016. So far, we have spent $18.5 million of that. And these are just some highlights from that slideshow that we went through back in the spring. We've purchased approximately 32.5 acres. 403 affordable units have been constructed, and there's another 197 units in the pipeline to be constructed with those funds. The Housing Trust Fund has been a really successful tool in leveraging the funding that we've put towards that. We did $5 million of the original bond to the Housing Trust Fund, and we're seeking feedback on the proposed uses of the remaining 6.5. Next. So just a few lessons learned from the past 5 years. Investing in capacity building and new nonprofits and new developers takes time. Policies need to be in place to guide decision-making prior to creating programs or implementing them. And again, the Housing Trust Fund has been a great success story for our bond money. It's very flexible. There's a lot of different uses, and we're getting different types of housing and serving different populations with that. Next. So of that 5 million that we allocated to the Housing Trust Fund, this is just a reminder from that same slideshow back in the spring. We funded approximately, I think this is 195 units. Amaranth Apartments, which was a tax credit project, 360 Hilliard, which was on city-owned land, Swananoa Bend, which was a private for-profit developer, and Habitat Home Ownership, and then Homeward Bound on Michigan Avenue developed 11 units. So those funds are committed. There's still some outstanding draws to happen with that money, but it's been spent. Next. So this is separate from the bond funding. So don't think of this as bond money, just in general for the Housing Trust Fund. At the beginning of August, we had about $3 million available to loan out of that fund. The council allocated $850,000. If you chose to allocate $1.5 million today, this is not assuming that you would, but if you did, we're taking that into account. And then we need to officially rescind the original restaurant court loan that City Council allocated a few years ago. So that would leave us with a balance of $1.65 million in the Housing Trust Fund. So that's not counting any bond funds. Next. So, so this is just a breakdown of the bond funds and what's remaining. So what is remaining is 6.5 million. And this is how we've spent those, the 18.5 in big chunks. The last allocation, you'll remember this summer, was for D Review Phase 1. Next. So we're recommending of that 6.5 million to take 500,000 of that and use it for planning for city-owned land. If we don't use all of that, we can always, reallocate that to the Housing Trust Fund, before next November if we need to. And then we would propose allocating 6 million to the Housing Trust Fund. And we would I'll just finish this slide, Councilwoman Turner, before we would come to City Council later this fall and winter with some small policy adjustments around the Housing Trust Fund. There are questions, should we be reserving some funds for land acquisition, or just have additional guidelines? Should we currently have a cap of $1 million? Should we raise that? Because we are regularly not sticking to that. Should we change the per unit subsidy, because costs have gone up like 35-40% in the last couple of years. So there's questions like that. And we're also doing research on other housing trust funds around the state and other cities just to get an idea of some other best practices. We also would like to, when we get this new infusion of funds into the Housing Trust Fund, more aligned with the Buncombe County funding cycle, so that there's not this constant going back and forth of not knowing what the other body is going to do. And we met with them yesterday, actually, the two staffs met, and we're talking about kind of aligning our documents that we ask for, which would actually make it easier for applicants. So if we're all getting the exact same information, it's a lot clearer, those kinds of things. Councilwoman Turner, did you have a question?
On the last slide, I'm wondering where the down payment assistance went.
Right, so that was not implemented. And so
are we rescinding it though? Is there a need for actual formal rescinding of it? I thought we had allocated for, I just wasn't sure. Maybe you could explain.
That's an interesting question. I didn't think so. We hadn't talked about that. I hadn't contemplated that. Nikki, would you?
I would say that just a quick process note. So today we are just seeking feedback, general questions, anything that you want to defer to AHAC to really take up for a policy consideration. And then we're actually going to be coming back at the next HCD meeting for a formal vote for the allocation as proposed here, with all of those conversations, any further refinements that are needed based on the discussion at AHAC, et cetera. But effectively, once HCD and council, if they were to decide to then enact this allocation, it would also include that reallocation of those down payment funds. So again, what we're seeing here, when Sasha showed that balance that was available with the bond funds, that included the down payment assistance, what we had held for down payment assistance. And just to finish that thought, what we also showed was, we had used some of Housing Trust Fund dollars to benefit a homeownership model at Habitat for Humanity. So again, our thinking is that Housing Trust Fund is flexible enough that we are able to accomplish homeownership goals, that being, again, a goal of council and the committee. So again, that was just another component to consider. But I think that was your question. So I'll pause and turn it back over to Sasha to finish.
Thank you. And I should have started that. I had a feeling I was going to forget that this is really just a feedback session first. This is an introduction of the topic and any questions you have that we can take forward. Yes.
Not so much a question, but when I see under consideration the reserving fund for land acquisition, I'm wondering if we could have this particular subset there as it relates to land acquisitions in areas previously redlined.
I think that's certainly a possibility, for sure. We can look at that.
And just, I'm seeing, oh, never mind. I see it on here. MHO. Okay. Never mind.
Katie, I guess we'll go forward from here. I don't think there's a lot left. So here's our process. From here, we would go to AHAC for some review and questions and feedback. Come back to you all on October 18th for a formal vote on this allocation. And then full city council on October 25th. And then we're really already starting to work on these Housing Trust Fund policy considerations, but would be bringing that to you all in November and December. And it's not a huge redo of the policy kind of thing. But again, I think with all new staff and kind of taking a fresh look and a changed market conditions and an infusion of money, want to make sure we're doing the best we can with that new infusion. So, and it's also possible that we do not have to allocate all 5 million of that, or 6 million, excuse me, in that, like in a funding cycle, next winter, spring. We could say council could make the decision, let's fund 4 million and then we're going to keep 2 million for next year or something like that. So that's also on the table.
We can do that with bond money?
I believe so. Yeah. Once it's allocated to the Housing Trust Fund.
Okay.
That's the
allocation.
The legal bar that we're getting to for.
And we have worked with bond counsel and with the finance team to really ensure that we're on firm footing in terms of compliance with the GO bonds. Because as we know, this consideration, this allocation, this proposal is really also informed by the fact that our bond timeline in effect concludes this time next year, pretty much. And so in our conversations with bond counsel, having this allocated towards a specific programs would then meet the test of our bond requirements. So again, we felt that this also met that test, so that we would be in compliance with those regulations as well.
I'd be curious, since this idea of going to AHAC for input, I'd be curious to know their feedback on a down payment assistance program somewhere in here. And I think preemptive to that, we'd have to know, I guess if we don't have a fund, like a down payment assistance fund, like we have a housing trust fund, then allocating it can't happen. Are we essentially saying we're not going to do any down payment, or that we might allow down payment out of the housing trust fund later? I would love AHAC's input on that, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Because I think it was a very desired program and certainly a needed program, but we weren't able to plug it in after the RFP and proposals didn't come back that aligned with it. So I know there were some hiccups, but I'm not sure that we want it to go away. Councilwoman, any thoughts?
I had a recent conversation with a group of local Black developers.
Wow.
Some who have already started some projects here and some who are looking to begin projects here. But they were proposing that we look at a site readiness program where the city would invest in a lot of that pre-work. helping through planning, zoning, surveys, title work, environmental studies, soil analysis, all of that. So once the project is RFP'd, then it'll be shovel ready. And this can help diversify our pipeline. And they are proposing that they can probably go deeper on affordability with that type of beginning, that type of start.
Yeah, that's often the risky part, what you're putting up to find out if the property is even a viable build sometimes. So that'd be interesting. I haven't heard of such an idea, but it makes sense. And then I know that would help align with getting funding, because I hear Dogwood Health Trust say this often, we really want to fund shovel-ready projects. So getting to that place might be a needed step.
So there is a program in West Virginia, but I think they use it more on the economic development side. When trying to attract industry, like it's more of on a commercial side of things. But I was thinking that if we can look at their certified site and development readiness program and kind of convert that to for affordable housing, then that might be a good model to look at.
Councilwoman
Right
Smith,
into the missing middle study. Sorry to interrupt.
that's okay. And Councilwoman Smith, if I could ask, was that just for any property or city-owned property, or do you?
They were really talking about city-owned property, especially the properties that were in that's been put aside for reparations. But I think we can kind of look at it overall and see how we can advance affordable housing.
And I did, I also had a similar, not exactly as well-formed thought as all that, but I did start last week. I did a little bit of research about pre-development, like are there housing trust funds around that are funding pre-development activities? I did find one in the city of Alexandria, Virginia. I didn't, basically it says, if you go forward with the site, it's, I forget how it goes. If the site doesn't work out, it's just forgiven. So it's kind of like it's almost like you accept that you're losing that money.
Right.
But yes, we can definitely look at that.
We see our private development community face that risk a lot, and they talk about it. And I think it's similar to almost what we did in a workaround way for the Haywood Street congregation. I believe we put up the money. They did some environmental testing with it.
That's what we did for 319 Biltmore, basically. We did all of the environmental work, and we did all of that before we even went out with the RFP. So
right, and I guess Oakhurst now, there's been a few. So this is great. I love the thinking around that.
And they really spoke about it being used as an equity tool as much as legally possible.
It makes me think about Ford Street too. There's so much room out there, and I know we're talking about a bigger programming, but I wonder if it could have multiple developers, kicking off their first little 4-packs and 6-packs in the region. Anyways, things to think about. I love that idea.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts, comments, things we would like AHAC to specifically review? Maybe we could ask him to talk about this $1 million versus the cap level, because when I see us repeatedly going over our cap, then it suggests that the policy isn't appropriate. Right? So we either need to change the cap or decide to stick to it or something, but maybe AHAC could give us some feedback on that.
Yes, for sure. Katie, I don't know if I have any more slides. I think it may just be the key takeaways again, and then just comments and questions. So that's all I have for this morning.
That key takeaway slide, can you go back for a second? The one up? Yeah, so those are some good numbers. I mean, magically 600 units even, and 32 acres. I don't think I've seen the amassed acreage like that, and that's a big number. That's good. It comes down to around 33,000 a unit when you do 5 over 600. Yeah, so that feels pretty good.
And that doesn't count the land too. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for pulling that together.
Sure.
Any other questions for Sasha or city staff, or any comments or thoughts? Okay. Well, we have the timeline, so if anything comes up you want AHAC to discuss, maybe we can speak to the liaison or send it to the staff. Thank you, and that will bring us to a close on item number 2 on our agenda. And it sounds like we'll be back next meeting to discuss formally. So item number 3 is a housing trust fund request for Laurelwood Apartments at 650 Caribou Road. And our new team member, Kevin Lynn, is going to present for us. Welcome, Kevin.
You're
You're on.
muted, Kevin.
Good morning, everyone. Today we'll be considering a request from Volunteers of America for their Laurelwood Apartments project at 650 Caribou Road in the Shiloh neighborhood for a housing trust fund request of $1,500,000. Next slide, please. So Volunteers of America is doing a project that combines both rehabilitation of 51 existing units and the construction of 54 new units for a total of 104 units, which includes a property management unit. The mix of incomes and the income affordability range from 80% of the area median income all the way down to 40% of area median income, with a project average rent affordable to approximately 60% of the area median income. The developer has engaged with the Shiloh neighborhood and has received some feedback in terms of the built design of the project, and the money that's being requested today will allow the project to better fit the neighborhood as requested by the Shiloh neighborhood residents. The staff is recommending approval by HCD and seeks committee action. Next slide, please. As I stated earlier, the Laurelwood Apartment Project will build 54 new affordable rental apartments and renovate 51 existing units in the Shiloh neighborhood. The site comprises approximately 15 acres, which allows for the additional units to be built. The units within the total project will be a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms. All of the units within the project will be affordable. As I stated earlier, the average rent would be affordable to households at 60% of area median income, but the ranges of rents will be affordable from 40% of area median income up to 80% of area median income. Next slide, please. This is an aerial shot of the development location in question. Laurelwood Apartments currently provides housing for seniors age 62 and older, but after project completion, the population served will expand to include those age 55 and older. Volunteers of America is requesting a loan of $1.5 million with 2% interest. And principal payments will be deferred for a period of 30 years. The Asheville Housing Trust funds will be secured with the deed of trust. Approximately $2,700,000 in principal and interest would be due at the maturity of the loan. And the affordability period would be in perpetuity, following the mission of Volunteers of America, which is a successful developer of affordable housing throughout the United States, as well as the affordability period required by the low-income housing tax credit allocation. Next slide, please. Here is a proposed unit and income mix showing the number of units at a particular rent and particular unit size, and the percentage of AMI or area median income that would be able to afford the project at that particular rent. This shows the sources of funding that are going into the project. As currently proposed by the developer, there'll be a first permanent mortgage from Boston Capital. There'll be a second mortgage from the Asheville Housing Trust Fund in the second position. There'll be a third mortgage from Buncombe County. In the equity position would be low-income housing syndication proceeds, which will also be provided by Boston Capital as currently proposed by the developer. There'll be a seller note, and some of the developer fee, approximately 40% of the total developer fee, will be deferred by the developer to make the project more financially feasible. Asheville Housing Trust Fund monies will comprise about approximately 6.5% of the total development costs. So we feel this is a solid use and leveraging of Asheville Housing Trust Funds. Next slide, please. So the project is renovating 50 existing units in a very successful housing development that's been successfully operating in the Charlotte neighborhood for approximately 3 decades, maybe a little longer than that. The affordability period will be in perpetuity. Under the current proposal of $1.5 million from the Housing Trust Fund, the subsidy is approximately $28,000 per unit if we're just looking at the new construction units, but that subsidy drops down to $14,500 per unit if we're looking at all 104 units, or a combination of both the rehabilitated units and the ones that will be newly constructed. Like I said earlier, the city's portion of the total development cost represents approximately 6.5%, which is a good leverage of city dollars. And at loan maturity, repayment of funds will be approximately $2.7 million. Next slide, please. So if we take our analysis and apply it directly to Housing Trust Fund policy, special terms are available to projects where 100% of the units are for households at or below 60% of AMI. This project has 30% of the units for those at 80% of AMI. And the average income of residents will be 60% of AMI, complying with North Carolina Housing Finance Agency guidelines. The updated request from Volunteers of America is over the $1 million Housing Trust Fund policy cap. So that's an exception to keep in mind. Next slide, please. So staff recommends approval based on the following. This will be a refurbishment of an existing 51-unit senior affordable housing development, which currently serves households at 62 years of age and older, but this age eligibility will expand to 55 plus after construction. And the project has operated successfully for approximately 3 decades in the Shiloh neighborhood. The project will include construction of 54 new affordable units. There will be a set aside of 6 new construction units for housing choice voucher holders. 12 new construction units for housing choice voucher holders. The Asheville Housing Trust Fund loan will comprise 6.6% of total development costs. The VOA is a longstanding affordable housing owner-operator in our community with a proven track record. Thank you.
Great first presentation, Kevin. Thank you. I have a couple questions. First, kudos. Can we go back up a few slides to the sources sheet? I see Kevin's impact already because we don't normally look at it like this, and this is great. I think this percentage of total cost is great. Seeing the entire sources stack is great, and it helps understand why the deferment is so important here, because you can see the level of financing and they're using it like equity essentially. So this is a really helpful slide, and I appreciate you presenting it in this way. I just wanted to mention that. So I guess I'm just kind of blanking on this. I don't have the policy in front of me. We do allow for renovation dollars from the HDF, right? There's not is it spoken about? Is there language speaking to renovations?
It is, it does, it kind of talks to the condition of the units. It's you could have a narrow or a wider reading of that. I think, I think the dollars really making possible the new units is, to me, the most important, but it also does extend, Kevin, pointed out the other day, it really does extend the life of those existing units. And in a way you could, Chapel Hill measures, one of their measures is how many units did we preserve? So in a way, I feel like it's a way we preserve existing affordable units.
Yeah, I really like it. I mentioned it because I couldn't remember if it's in there, and if it's not, we probably want something in there that speaks to that because preservation is becoming just as important, it seems like. And then you did correct it to 12 vouchers accepted. Did I hear that correctly? Not 6? Okay, great. And some of this makes me think like, I like that this one has interest. Some have been coming with 0 interest. We're seeing more and more deferment requests, but at some point we're probably going to want to look at the timeline, like 30 years out, like when this money comes back in. Like, I don't know that we're projecting that, right? Because when you get $2.7 million back into a fund in 30 years, I mean, that's a big number. I don't know if we're tracking out that far. Maybe you guys are, but we might want to start if not. But thank you, Kevin. I just really appreciate your first presentation. Great job. And I appreciate it. Women, any other questions or thoughts? Oh, great. Okay. Let's see.
Chair Turner, I know that the Volunteers of America folks are here and they did have some slides.
Okay.
I don't know if you all.
Sure.
There weren't too many.
Okay. Unless you have a 40-minute presentation, let's go.
Yeah. Noemi, sorry, Kevin, I'm jumping in here, but Noemi, where did you go?
I see her.
Right here.
Riviera is here, and Rodrigo Galavis is here from VOA.
Naomi and Rodrigo, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. So I just have a short slides. I wanted to show you really the site plan and elevations so you get a good idea of what we're trying to accomplish at the site. So next slide, please. So our vision is really to deliver high quality developments for seniors that brings affordable housing, residential amenities, and community health services for the residents of Asheville. The picture there is the existing building. That's a great picture, but it is aging, so we are going to be renovating it. Next slide, please. Again, just in context, the site north is up. To the west is Hendersonville Road. To the right is Sweeten Creek Road. And then I-140 is towards the top north. So next slide, please. And it is 14.3 acres in the Shiloh community. The existing building, as Kevin mentioned, has 50 one-bedroom units plus a non-rental 2-bedroom unit. All of them will be rehabilitated. It is an aging building. We're going to be renovating, putting in new windows, a new roof, replacing gutters and downspouts. And then the interior, we're going to be upgrading it to be more energy efficient, insulating the fire sprinklers, repainting the entire common areas and units, adding new flooring, new kitchen countertops, etc. So it is an extensive renovation and preserving that building for longer term use. And then the new building, Laurelwood 2, we did originally propose it along Caribou Road to the west of the site. And that was because this is a site that slopes towards the east. So there's a big difference in the topography. But after engaging the Shiloh community, they really requested that we move away from Caribou Road. It is a narrow road, and they felt that a 3-story building would be a little bit too imposing. So we took those considerations into account and moved it into the interior of our site. So when you're driving along Caribou Road, we do have existing trees that we're going to be preserving. So you almost will not even see the building because it's tucked away in the back. But that does pose some challenges for us, and we will have to add retaining walls because of the topography. Next slide, please. So these are just some elevations of what the building will look like. The top elevation is, faces the other building. if you see, there's a little map at the center of the elevations there that shows you which elevation is which. The middle elevation is kind of the end cap that faces Caribou Road. And then the bottom elevation is the one that faces Ardmore. And that's the side that would have the retaining walls. Next slide. And those, the east wing, again, the top elevation faces the back, and then the middle elevation, the cap of that wing, and then the bottom elevation has the portico to the left, and that faces, that's what you would see as the approaching, as you turn into the site and approach the building. Next slide. Oh, that's it. So I'd be happy to take some questions.
Thank you. And thank you for being here today. Councilwoman Mosley?
I believe you started down the road of answering what my question was. In the previous presentation, there was a blurb about changes made in accordance with the desires of the neighborhood. So you just mentioned the elevation on Caribou. I was wondering what, if any, other requests the community had made and how you accommodated those requests.
So the main concern was being on frontage on the Caribou Road. It is a 3-story building. We really could not keep it at 2-story like the existing building because that would diminish the number of units and just would not make the numbers work. So instead we chose to put it into the interior of the site. It pretty much gives the same effect. You can't really see the building from Caribou Road. We're preserving all the mature trees that are on there. And that seemed to be something that the community agreed would be acceptable.
Any other
Does that
questions?
answer your question?
You did. I was wondering if they had any other requests besides that.
That was the main request. I mean, obviously they want to preserve as many of the mature trees as possible, which is something we want to do as well, and we are doing.
Any other questions or comments, Councilwoman? We do have a request to take action on this and make a recommendation to council. If anyone would like to make a motion.
I'll do it.
Got it.
I move to recommend that the Asheville City Council approve Volunteer of America's request for $1.5 million housing trust fund dollars, a loan to construct 54 new apartments and rehabilitate 51 existing units for seniors.
I'll second.
Thank you, women. I have only one comment to make, which is, again, just to point out that we are going over our current cap of $1 million for this fund policy. So just to point out that we may want to consider that again as we amend this policy. And that, and also I mentioned that the idea of tying to the county's funding cycle would also help here, because I noticed in that capital stack, their contribution is almost half of what we are. And I've heard from other councilwomen at the dais on council night meetings that is a concern to them. So we might want to just address that as well. And I think shoring up the timeline will help. Those are my only comments, and I'm ready for a roll call vote if no one else has any comments or discussion.
I have just a brief question for Volunteers of America. I see that you all also have housing products for other vulnerable populations, like people with disabilities, individuals who have just returned from the justice system. Do you have any other projects or any other future plans to provide housing in this area for other demographics?
Not in the city of Asheville at the moment. We do have other projects in North Carolina.
Yeah, just to add to that, we do have, I want to say at least 3 or 4 more properties in Asheville. And one of them is this, I think it's the Lighthouse of Asheville. I'm pretty sure that covers a different population. I want to say it's a special population. I don't know the details about that, but that mainly goes through one of our affiliates, which is the Chesapeake in the Carolinas. So they would cover more of that kind of market, and we can always foster some sort of a partnership with them, being us in the national office and then being the affiliate. So we work with them in a lot of capacities, one being co-developers, another one having them provide services to our residents. So if any opportunity comes up, we'll be looking at working with them in that capacity. So we're definitely looking forward to this, hopefully be the first of many new developments. Like I said, we're open to doing meeting different needs for different markets. So that's kind of our goal, and we're looking forward to keep working with the city of Asheville. We appreciate your help on this one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions before we go to a roll call vote? Okay. All right. Vice Mayor Smith.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mosley.
Aye.
Myself, Sage Turner. Aye. Congratulations, team. And that will move forward to council. And we appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank
And
you
that's
so
so
much.
much.
All right. And that concludes item number 3. And all we have left is public comment. I did see via email that we had no emailed public comments. I guess Katie is our helper today. Katie, do we have anyone on the phone?
No, we do not.
Well, goodness, it looks like we're going to finish a little early today. With no other public comments, we're done for the day. So thank you everyone for being here, and enjoy this extra little time we've created, and we are adjourned. Have a good day.